In part 6 of our series on learning to play Osprey game Zona Alfa, we are going to cover melee combat. Now there are two types of combat, ranged and melee. This video is only for melee combat. In part 5, we covered ranged combat. The requirements for melee combat are similar to ranged combat in that the attacker must spend an action to attack and have an appropriate weapon. Also, they must be in base-to-base contact with their target. Melee combat is resolved by all models involved simultaneously. It is important to note up front that while the attacker must expend an action to engage the defender, melee combat is considered simultaneous. The defender does not have to expend actions to fight back. You will also notice in the rulebook that models can have cover and obstruction bonuses, and that there is a melee advantage to having higher innovation. I have not figured that part out, since there's a requirement for base-to-base contact, so I don't know how a higher elevated target would get an advantage in melee. But regardless, in this simultaneous throwdown, both the attacker and defender will roll the appropriate firepower and armor save rolls at the same time for every round of melee. Each player takes into account their model's respective combat abilities, special abilities, weapon, firepower, damage, and armor ratings. Any die rolls of the unmodified target number or less are a hit. Successful hits are tallied and compared. The results are applied at the end of each round of melee. So he got a 9, which is horrible. He got a critical success, which is good. Now let's talk about the punch and thrust, the hit and parry. At the end of each round of melee, the number of successful hits by both attacker and defender are compared. The attacker then has the option to use any of their successful hits to parry or cancel out an equal number of the defender's successful hits. The resulting remaining hits are subject to armor saves and resolved as normal. So depending on the dice results, this can allow the attacker to avoid damage while inflicting it. It's also possible for the attacker and the defender to kill each other simultaneously. The last model standing is the winner of the melee. Now there is a penalty for using non-melee weapons in melee. So for example, my knife man right here has a knife and a submachine gun, so he's fine. These are both considered melee weapons. This individual has an assault rifle, not considered a melee weapon. He'll suffer a -2 penalty to his combat ability. So, there is no advantage to placing one executed vertical butt stroke. Hurrah. Alright, thank you for joining in this episode on melee combat. We'll see you next time.